Welcome to Campfire Wisdom. Grab a seat around the fire and tell us your story.
Welcome back to Campfire Wisdom. This is Greg, and thank you for joining me today. Wow, I cannot believe 2017 is already gone. Yeah, I remember being a kid and the years would last forever. You know, when you're 10 years old, 1 year essentially is 10% of your life. So if you figure now I'm in my 40s, the same effect of 4 years is equivalent to 1 year back then. So that, that changing continuum is something that I always think about. And I'll always talk to people who are older than me and they're like, you have no idea. Time is going to just blink by, fly by. And I guess that's why every year we come to that point where we feel like we need some type of resolution, some type of, bold declaration, if you will, about what we plan on changing for ourselves in the future. Maybe it's about gauging where you're at or wanting to aspire for something better. I don't know, some greatness. But I think it grabs all of us. It's those moments when you reflect on your life and also reflect on what you did in the last year. I'm sure I've owned up to it already, and you guys can probably already tell just from listening, but I overanalyze everything. So, I guess I haven't even really articulated what my resolution would be for myself. I did go back to yoga this week, and I did go back to the gym. So I'm absolutely very sore right now. So my goal in this year is to keep and maintain that. I've always been very fitness minded, but I think that's one of the things, like I was saying, that I've kind of let slide. But I think there's other things to aspire to. And I think one thing that I do want to commit to doing is I already camp a lot, but I think I find myself camping at some of the places that I know are easy to get to, that you don't have to fight for, you don't have to wait. And my weakness is planning. So I am excellent at being spontaneous. I can adapt to any situation quickly. However, planning as the result of a very disciplined childhood is, my Achilles heel. It drives me crazy sometimes. And I know that when you do plan correctly, you are going to get more things done. I'll be able to go to more cool campsites and see more interesting things. So in this coming year, I'm committing myself to being a better planner and to also doing more campsites that I haven't done in the past. So with that, I thought that it might be appropriate that, especially since this is we're having a conversation about connecting with nature, but I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about one of the most popular things you need when you're camping, and that's a tent. And I think in the weeks to come, I'd like to cover some of the camping essentials that I think are super important, and some of the things that you might consider when you're looking for things, especially when you're looking for a tent. Obviously, there's tents for every single purpose, but there are some definite things you want to consider when you're looking for something, and at the same time, investing in a tent. Because I think the tendency for people to look at camping gear, sometimes people just say, oh, what can I get that's inexpensive? And I'll be totally honest with you. You can buy a used tent or you can buy a cheap tent for next to nothing. But if you run into a storm or you run into a situation where you're actually maybe in a more challenged environment, you will understand why tents are more expensive than those cheapy ones. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about a tent. So I think the best thing to start at is to think about size. And the best way you might want to think about that is, what do you plan on doing? Is this for you and your significant other? Is this for you alone? that's kind of the best way to start. So a 2-person tent generally is fantastic if there are going to be 2 people and then maybe a couple days worth of pack. You could fit your stuff inside with you by your head or feet. Generally speaking, they usually have enough room for taller people and whatnot. Obviously, check sizes and for yourself, but generally a 2-person tent has enough accommodation for maybe a small pack that you might need to use for a couple days. And that 2-person tent is fantastic for 1 person and all your gear. So if you're a 1-person, camping extravaganza, and you sometimes have 2 people, probably a 2-person tent is going to be perfect. If you are a overpacker by nature and you like sleeping on a cot where you're going to need more room, you probably want to think about a 4-person tent. That's going to give you enough room to, get those cots to fit inside of there. You'll have a little bit extra room for your gear, especially if you're an overpacker. If you get into the realm of like 6-person, 8-person, that type of stuff, you definitely want to be conscientious about how much space you take up, because I've found that oftentimes when you do get to a site, there may not be a ton of ideal spaces for tents, meaning there's not a lot of flat ground, and sleeping on a uneven surface sucks. So keep that in mind. Another thing to consider when you are thinking about size is the bigger the tent you have, the harder it is to warm up. Meaning, if you plan on camping in a cold environment, you're going to have to warm up that air. And trust me, if you're in a big tent and there's like 2 of you in a 4-person tent, you're going to be cold at night, especially if it's cold. Now, if you have a 2-person tent and there's 2 of you, that's a smaller area for you guys to heat up. You're going to benefit more from each other's body heat, and you will be more comfortable. So if you're cold weather camping, pick a smaller tent that's going to be tighter around you, keep you toasty. The big tent's going to chill you, and I promise you, you will hate life in the morning when you have not slept because you froze your ass off. So think about that one. Another thing to consider is weight. So if you're the kind of, if you're a 4-wheel camper, in that you're going to be driving up to a campsite, pitching a tent, close to, paved roads and stuff like that, that doesn't really matter. Weight it's not a big deal. But if you're going to be doing some backpacking, you're going to want, that 1 to 2 extra pounds of light weight, reducing that is going to be significant. But I will tell you to keep in mind is those super light backpacking tents are usually made of aluminum poles. And those poles are very fragile if you're not using them properly. So if you don't, collapse them and you don't set them up properly, even just being lazy, you will bend the shit out of those aluminum poles. And I speak from experience because I got this dope ass tent and it was light. It was like, oh man, I think it was a big Agnes. That's what it was. I ended up returning it because it was just not very pragmatic. I used it for a little bit, and by the way, I'm going to sing the tunes of REI right now because they will take anything back if you don't like it and you use it, and it's like, this isn't great. I didn't like the way that they designed the zippers on it. It was like this ultralight tent. It was like essentially 1.5 pounds without the fly. So it was just fantastic. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Weight is something to consider. Again, not a big deal if you're driving up and you need something that's durable and you want something hardy. Then I say, who cares? Get with a good company, something you can set up quick, and you'll be good. Going hand in hand with the issue of weight is whether or not your tent has a fly. Now, there are tents out there that say they have a fly, and the fly looks like, a yarmulke, like something that just fits on the very top of the structure, and it's not very functional at all. If there was a big storm, it's just going to rain on the side of your tent. It's going to get wet. You're going to get wet. It's not going to give you any weather protection at all. So really take a look at how the fly works and if it covers the entire tent. And this is what I would push for. I would try to find a fly that extends beyond the perimeter of the tent and creates vestibules, so like little areas where it's dirt, but it's covered by your fly, so you could keep your gear outside if you needed to. You could keep your shoes outside if you needed to maximize space, or at least have some area where maybe during like a cold night and you don't want to get out and it's fucking cold and it's snowing or whatever, you can just literally piss out your tent. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes it's so damn cold you don't want to get up. You just lean over, you pop, pull down your pants, do what you got to do. I gotta admit, my girl is a fucking trooper. There have been times when we've been camping and she will just literally step outside the tent, squat, and pee right there, and I love her for it, and she's low maintenance, and that's amazing. So shout out to you, Geese. She's gonna love this. Enjoy that, babe. But yeah, anyways, so you want to have something that gives you that space. So when you're going for a tent, remember, you want to fly and you want a tent with a vestibule. Trust me, you want it. Another very important part about choosing a tent are the poles. Old tents, you would have to set up the poles, and then you would slide them inside of these canvas sleeves and then stretch the tent over the poles, and then basically clip the ends in, and it would be like this tension mount, the fabric creating tension with the poles to make the tent stand up. Newer quality manufacturers use the poles, and they basically clip into the perimeter of the floor plan of the tent, and then you actually clip the tent itself to the poles. Those are better because they're easier to set up, they're more sturdy, and you're not going to have to worry about, oh shoot, in a really strong wind or a storm or anything like that where it's really being stretched, that canvas will tear, and you don't want to have to worry about torn canvas. So trust me, stick with a tent that has poles and where the tent actually mounts to the poles itself. Much easier to set up. I can't even tell you how much easier it is to set up. You can do it quickly. And like I was telling you in a previous podcast, when I was camping up in that rainstorm, sometimes the difference between being able to set up your tent slow and fast is you being drenched. So one time when I got caught up in that storm up at McGill, luckily I was able to put my tent up and down quickly because of its structure. I literally just dragged the piece from one side to the other, boom, put the tent poles back in, whoop, popped it right back up. So it was very easy to basically set things up again and then dodge the rain. So definitely something to consider, okay? One thing that's important, and the one thing that I really like doing, is when I'm outdoors, I don't like to use my fly unless I need to for temperature reasons. So I like to have a great view from my tent. Well, guess what? You can't have a good view from your tent if it's obviously all fabric. So when you're looking at a tent, consider that you're going to be laying on the ground. You're probably going to be looking up. And one of the best things about camping is just seeing the stars and seeing the sky, and just, I don't know, in some ways connecting with the past, in that that's how our ancestors did it. They just fell asleep looking up. I guess we romanticize that sometimes they were in a cave staying warm, using animal pelts and saying ooga booga, but truly, before man even had shelter, they were outside. They were looking up and pondering and looking at the stars. So you're going to want that. So my advice to you, find a tent that you can see, that you can get a good view. And the secondary side of it is that, if you're the kind of person who likes to see what's going down, if you're, you want to know if there's an animal around you, or shoot, you want to wake up in the morning and you see the deer that are eating the grass right by your tent, that's fucking awesome. So trust me, get something that's viewable. One thing to consider is maybe the doors have a screen that you can unzip, so essentially that really increases your viewable area. You could always close the doors. So essentially the door has two layers. It's got like a fabric layer and then a screen layer, so that could give you more visibility. Also, something to consider is multiple doors. So what I love about the tent that I have, that I've used for like the last 6 seasons, is it has 2 doors. So I can get out of one side without having to climb over geese and vice versa. It just makes things a whole lot easier as far as going in and out. And besides, you could get in, keep one side where your shoes are at. If you're a kind of a clean person, you want to have the shoes on one side and then you get out the other. I don't know. Some people like to do different things like that. But I think you definitely want something with two doors. Either that or enough space where maybe the window's big and it could also be used to maybe get in and out if you wanted to. There's a couple really good companies out there that are making amazing tents. Like I was telling you, I think I've had mine for I think I just said 5 seasons, but I think it's more like 6 or 7. It's a Eureka. Eureka makes a really, really durable, really good tent, and they're very thoughtful in their design. Like I was telling you, the flies are always good. They usually have vestibules, very, very durable, and they're just real thoughtful about like the pockets they have inside and just the area that you can view out of it. But I will say I'm really excited about this. It's a newer company, and it's called Marmot, Marmot. And I just got a sleeping bag from them, and I absolutely fucking love it. It's amazing. It's like it zips down on both sides, so it almost has like a comforter-like feel. So when it's warmer, you can use it kind of more like a blanket. But my buddy Alex has one of their tents called a tungsten. And the tungsten is designed for the stargazer. I tell you what, the entire tent itself is practically all mesh. It's fantastic. So if you're the kind of person that likes to get that outdoor experience, but you don't want to get destroyed by bugs, you get that tent, you got the screen right there. You can see everything outside. And I mean that. You could literally, if you're faced one way, you could see, you're laying down on the ground. You can see the entire, it's completely open on one side, so it kind of like slants with the fabric. It's just really cool. Another good company, as always, is Coleman. Coleman's been making badass shit since I was a kid. Coleman lanterns, Coleman sleeping bags, Coleman tents. It's relatively, it's fairly priced. I think, they're kind of an older name, so you do pay a little bit for the name, but they're durable. They last a long time. The stuff they make is just good. I don't know if they necessarily really cater to, like I was telling you, having a great view from your tent, but I'm sure you could find something that would suit, so keep that in mind. Eureka, Marmot, and Coleman, that's going to be my recommendations for you. Before we break camp for the day, I want to offer you something in the spirit of the new year. It's called a cup of coffee. A group of alumni, highly established in their careers, got together to visit their old university professor. Conversation soon turned into complaints about stress in work and life. Offering his guests coffee, the professor went to the kitchen, returned with a large pot of coffee and an assortment of cups. Porcelain, plastic, glass, crystal, some plain looking, some expensive, some exquisite, and told them to help themselves to the coffee. When all the students had a cup of coffee in hand, the professor said, "If you noticed, all the nice-looking, expensive cups have been taken up, leaving behind the plain and cheap ones. While it is normal for you to want only the best for yourselves, that is the source of your problems and stress. Be assured that the cup itself adds no quality to the coffee. In most cases, it is just more expensive, and in some cases even hides what we drink. What all of you really wanted was coffee, not the cup, but you consciously went for the best cups, and then you began eyeing each other's cups. Now consider this. Life is the coffee. The jobs, money, and position in society are the cups. They are just tools to hold and contain life, and the type of cup we have does not define nor change the quality of life we live. Sometimes, by concentrating only on the cup, we fail to enjoy the coffee. Savor the coffee, not the cups. The happiest people don't have the best of everything. They just make the best of everything. Live simply, love generously, care deeply, speak kindly." Well, that's about all I have to say today, guys. I want to thank you for joining me here on Campfire Wisdom. And until we talk next time, have a great day, get outside, and have a fantastic Happy New Year. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Campfire Wisdom is brought to you from the hills of Rancho, Cucamonga. We'd like to thank the men and women that protect our national parks and forests. You make this journey possible. Theme music by Sean Cromwell.